Welcome everyone to another session on exponential sales and entrepreneurship. We have a really special guest today. My guest today is one of only 1,600 people in the world to be fully qualified as a functional medicine practitioner. She's a Cambridge graduate and started her career as a consultant to the world's biggest pharma companies, where she worked kind of closely with them on product go-to-market strategy and positioning. So she's worked with companies like GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, Boehringer Ingelheim, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, Merck, and Takeda, just to name a few. In the last 2 years, she pivoted to functional medicine, which is a kind of cutting-edge approach to full system health. And it's really based on, as my understanding of it, it's really based on science and biochemistry. So she studied under the Functional Medicine Institute within the Cleveland Clinic and has since specialized in helping people with chronic illnesses and autoimmune disorders. One of her biggest client categories, and the reason why I'm so excited to have her on, is working with professionals within high intense job roles. And she's delivered some incredible results in turning around not just their health, but especially their mental performance within their jobs. So I've been hounding her for the last few months to join us. The fact that she's my wife didn't make it any easier to get her on board because she was so busy, but I'm delighted to finally have her on our show. So please welcome the lady whose clients I know have spoken and talked to her about being their health angel. Please welcome Amal Ismail. Amal, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Moeed. It's so nice to be here, and it's so exciting to be with you and talking about mental performance and mental clarity for sales performance, because this is such an important topic, especially nowadays where our world has flipped upside down, and the way we do business and the way we approach all our social interactions has changed, and that puts a significant demand on our body. So I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much for bringing the topic of health to the forefront when it comes to performance, because without health, we cannot perform.
Absolutely, and people associate it more with sports and athletes, but really it's so important even in the business world. So I'm really excited to hear some of your advice and what are the things you're observing within the kind of career community and the professionals out there. So let's start firstly with functional medicine. Can you just explain to us what is functional medicine? Because I heard about it obviously because you started it, but most of the people I ask haven't either never heard of it or have probably heard just very fringe things about it. So what is functional medicine?
Great, thank you. Great question. It is quite it's an enigma for many people, and not very well defined in many people's minds. But what functional medicine is, it's not different from conventional medicine, but in which the approach in which functional medicine treats illness or treats disease or optimizes health is different. So it's the philosophy behind it. And
Right.
the concept of functional medicine is about treating the whole person by addressing the root cause of illness. So what is driving that illness? Is the illness driven by a biochemical imbalance? Is it driven by a behavioral component? Is it driven by an environmental trigger? So we're looking at going to the cause of the cause, not just addressing the symptoms, which what conventional medicine tends to focus on, because it's based on the concept of acute medicine. You get ill, we treat you. That's the basics, and it's phenomenal because without acute medicine, without conventional medicine, we wouldn't have been able to expand our life expectancy.
Right. Yeah.
But when it comes to longevity, this is where functional medicine shines, because it's not just about how many years you live; it's how much life in those years. Right? Our bodies are not designed to break at the age of 40 or 50 or 60 as we all think it should because of with aging. In fact, our bodies are so incredibly resilient, but sometimes we get in the way of their ability to heal and help and support us in achieving our goals and visions. So the whole objective of functional medicine is not about eradicating illness. It's about optimizing health by understanding the interaction between your biochemistry, your environment, and your genetics, and where is the trigger that led to the sequence of events that ultimately culminated in symptoms and in some people disease. So it's root cause medicine at the base of it.
That's super interesting. So with that root cause in mind, and I appreciate everyone's unique, and it sounds like your approach is very unique and tailored to the individual because everyone's genetics are obviously different, their life experiences are different, the way they express those things are very different. But what I really would like to ask is, what are some of the health-related trends that you're seeing amongst um, career professionals, high intense professionals, people obviously in sales, but it's not just sales, it's those in corporate jobs, management consultants, people at executive level where there's so much pressure on them on a day-to-day basis. So what are some of the health trends that you're seeing amongst that community?
Yeah, really great question. So I think the common thing I see that in terms of people I speak to within, as in friends who come to me for advice, but also my clientele, is essentially issues with brain fog,
Right.
lack of ability to concentrate, poor quality sleep, high stress, palpitations, weight gain, fluctuating energy during the day,
Right.
um, bad skin, gut disturbance. So, and really a lot of these issues have a detrimental impact on their performance. They feel that, they want to give more, but they're unable to give more. And the more they push, the more they get worse. And I
Right.
think the biggest problem we face nowadays is brain fog. Most people are walking around with this cloud over their head and they can't understand how to get rid of it. Is it, they feel that, okay, if I drink more caffeine, will that solve the problem?
Yeah.
Right? And people are really are much more health aware these days. You can see a big trend towards meditation, mindfulness, healthy eating, organic foods. We've got a lot of wearable technology now. People are more, more aware and trying to build more awareness around their body and how it functions.
Mm.
However, I think we're missing the fundamentals that we do on a daily basis that act as biological forces in our body. and
Right.
and those are things like how we sleep, what we eat, when we eat, how we eat, our breathing, how much activity we do, what type of activity we do, stress relief, our relationships. All of these factors are every day. Think of your body as the supercomputer, and you're sending it messages, code, in order for it to perform. And
Mm.
if all the behaviors that you are doing on a daily basis are of a particular pattern, then the code that's going to be written into the computer is going to result in that in that dysfunction,
Mm.
i.e., brain fog. So that's really the biggest problem. Is I see a lot of my patients come to me, especially working in the corporate world, where they're saying, look, like I have so much pressure, I've got big deadlines, big targets to meet, but I'm really struggling, I can't sleep well, I have this massive brain fog, I'm constantly getting sick, I find myself taking antibiotics frequently, I have allergies, how do I address that? And that's where we start to unpack their story and what's going on a daily basis in terms of their behavior.
Right. Okay. So I would. That's really interesting because I'd really like to dive deeper into the whole issue of brain fog and lack of focus and energy levels because I know for any professional that's an important thing, but coming from my world and the clients that I have in the sales profession, that is incredibly important. In fact, it's vital to their very performance. And I know that your experience and sympathetic in this area because you were a senior vice president in the company and you've been involved in that high pressure organization. Before we get into the details around those things like brain fog, etc., I just wanted to also ask, what extra pressure or impact are you seeing either directly or indirectly as a result of COVID and the pandemic right now? What are some of the things that you're seeing that's adding to those pressures that we already had, such as brain fog, etc.?
Yeah, great question. So I think with COVID, it's a double-edged sword. From one side, it's made people hyper vigilant about their health because of
Mm.
severe concern about catching the illness or passing it to
Yeah.
vulnerable family members or loved ones. And so people have become more aware about, okay, I need to be more careful about my health. Now, how they go about it is a different story, but that's a really good thing about, let's say a silver lining a little bit of COVID and how fragile our environment and we as humans against environmental factors. The other side of it is that not COVID per se, as in the SARS-CoV-2 virus and ultimately the disease, but it's the implication of the lockdowns that it had on us. So in one hand, yes, people are traveling less, and we know travel has a significant impact on your health and well-being, and we can come to that later.
Mm.
But actually, this sedentary lifestyle, lack of exposure to the environment, loneliness is a big factor.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of time, a lot of screen time, which causes significant disruption to our circadian rhythms. So all of these factors, it's a new paradigm we're operating in, and so we as a result of COVID, a lot of people are now struggling with mental issues, with stress management issues, with structural issues, because we're sitting on laptops for a really long time and we're not moving and we don't even notice because our meetings run from, right up, they roll into each other. I mean, I experience that with my patients. I always try to leave a buffer so I can take a break, stretch myself, put myself in the zone for my next patient. But because you're so eager to serve and you feel the pressure, you tend to forget about yourself, and as a result 5-6 hours pass and you're basically in a sedentary position. You haven't drank much water, you probably didn't eat, your blood sugars have dropped, and that has a significant impact on your overall performance, in particular cognitive function.
Right. Okay. So I was going to ask about brain fog, but you brought something up just now that I think it will be really important for our listeners to understand. So before we get into things like brain fog and energy levels, what are some of the things, just repeat some of those again, what are some of the things that we can do during our day that will help us feel less of that pressure, help us perform in a better way? So you talked about things like, going up and stretching, going for a walk, making sure that you drink enough water, even taking a break in between tasks, which I know from a neuroscience perspective is incredibly important. There's enough research out there to show that. So could you just walk us through, in the day in a life, what are some of the things that we could be doing during our day that will help us feel a bit more, I don't want to say relaxed, but, to feel a bit more focused, less pressure, less intensity that might negatively impact our performance?
Yeah. So there's quite a few things. I just wanted to mention one thing about this. This really, we're living in a time of high level of uncertainty and a lot of fear.
Right.
And while a lot of people might think that's only has psychological impact, but actually the biochemistry of fear in itself causes tremendous physiological changes in our body. And if we are constantly spending our days checking the news, waiting to see how many cases rose, how many people died, what is the next steps in terms of lockdown, so on and so forth, we're constantly putting our body in a state of anxiety. And that in itself results in the activation of your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, the fight or flight or freeze response is really great when you're in, short-term stress situations. It's adapted from our ancestry, right? When they used to run away from tigers and so on. So it hasn't changed, right? The biochemistry hasn't changed. So when your brain, your hypothalamus registers the stress signal, then it passes on messages to the pituitary onto your adrenal glands to release cortisol.
Mm.
Cortisol is great in small doses, but if you're continuously producing cortisol on a chronic level, that basically drives you into that sympathetic overdrive mode.
Mm.
And that's really bad because what does that do? It basically puts your body in survival mode. So it pulls the blood away from all your organs and concentrates it to the heart, lungs, and muscles, because the expectation is you're running away from fear. So as a result, you get reduction of blood supply to your liver, to your kidneys, and to your brain.
Mm.
Because at that time, the body's not expecting you to be solving, a complex math puzzle, right? The body is just trying to say, hey, we've got to survive. So we've got to push through this. I'm going to prioritize the heart, the lungs, and the muscles. The longer we deprive the rest of the organs from that supply, the nutrition depletes, and then we start getting problems. The other factor is that our blood thickens, because in case we're attacked and you get cut, you don't bleed to death. That's a problem, because that affects our blood pressure, it affects our circulation, our vascular integrity. The third piece, sorry, is that it causes transient permeability in your gut lining. So the gut lining becomes kind of like a cheesecloth with big holes. And so that nutrients can pass quickly in order to fuel the body. But as a result, toxins that are inside start to leak out, and essentially they drive inflammation because they're picked up by the immune system. And you now are in basically a storm of inflammatory molecules and cytokines. And so that all in itself drives the decline in cognitive and mental function. So ultimately, what you want to do in the day is minimize your exposure to things that are going to affect you, that you have control over. So of course, work comes with its own stresses. Nobody's expecting you to shut down your laptop and run away from it. However, first thing you do in the morning, wake up, don't touch your phone. Don't look at the news. Nothing had changed from last night. Don't look at the news. If it's big enough, you will find out shortly after. Go outside, take a few deep breaths, drink your cup of tea in the morning, preferably herbal tea or warm water with lemon, and do some stretching, move your body a little bit. All of this, one, it helps set your circadian rhythm. It helps your body align that, okay, now this is the waking cycle. We need to get the body functioning in that mode. And as a result, all your hormones get released at the right time, your immune system functions at the right time, and so on, and all your organs start to operate and building up in preparation for what comes in the day. Okay, so what you do in the morning is so critical, because that sets up your sleep-wake cycle, and that's so important for subsequently the activities that happen in your body. And this next,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, because I was just going to summarize that, because basically what you're saying is, first thing when you wake up in the morning, your routine should be about self and your connection to the natural environment, as opposed to any technology or news or information coming in. What you want to do is focus on yourself, which is stretching or breathing and things like that, and then focus on your physical or spiritual, whatever it might be, but your connection to the natural environment, which is go for a walk in the park, go outside, breathe in some fresh air, take a few deep breaths, etc. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying. Would you say that's,
Absolutely.
yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And spend time with your loved ones. So if you have a partner, spend time with them in the morning to chat about how you feel, what are you going to do for the day. If you have children, be present with them, play with them, because this is so important. Connection is so important for our well-being, because again, you want to start your day when you're in the rest and restoration mode. You want to be in the parasympathetic system, not in the sympathetic nervous system. So
Right.
you are going to get activated, right? Your sympathetic nervous system, you're going to get triggered. But let's delay that trigger to allow the body to build resilience so that you can get through the day. So a lot of my advice first thing to my patients is, please avoid the news, avoid your phones, take, even if it's half an hour in the morning that's just for you, that is wonderful. Feed your body, feed your mind with good thoughts. You can write out your plan, because one of the big things I see is our routine has gone out the window, because we no longer
Yeah.
wake up and shower, get ready, dress, walk out, commute, have our breakfast, sit at the desk, so on and so forth. So our routine is broken. Our traditional routine is broken. And so as a result, we feel like everything is melding into one, right? And so that is really bad. Your body needs routine. Just like a baby needs routine, you need routine. Your body thrives on routine. So you need to create that routine even if you're at home. because that's how you build resilience.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I speak to a lot of my colleagues and my clients, and they're saying that work and home is kind of almost meshed together, and they're finding themselves waking up later and only giving themselves a few minutes to get ready before they start going on their laptops and their first Zoom call or whatever it might be. So that's hugely great advice, actually, there, Amal. So once you've conducted your morning routine and you focused on self and your connection to the natural environment and to your family, what next? So when you go through your day, what are some of the simple yet powerful things we should be aware of and should do that will greatly help our energy and then help our ability to perform?
Yep. So the next thing I would say is you need to schedule breaks in your day. And I don't mean
Right.
by long breaks. If, of course, you're going to have a lunch break, and of course, you're going to, well, I hope you will, because if you're not eating your meals regularly, then that's also going to impact your performance, because that's going to alter your insulin levels and your sugar levels in the body, and that's going to drive a drop in energy. Okay.
Right.
So you definitely want to have regular meals, because again, your body is expecting that in order to maintain that circadian rhythm in good function. So, for example, uh, when we think about this comes from Chinese medicine actually. So in Chinese medicine, we know they look at the body as you have this big circadian clock, the
Mm.
master clock, which is the wake cycle clock, and then each organ has a peripheral clock that's synced to that master clock. And
Mm.
so if your master clock is out of balance, then all the other clocks become out of balance because they no longer have anything to follow to lead.
Right.
So when it comes to your gut, and this is so critical because I so many of my patients have gut issues, um, it's your gut is primed to receive and digest and absorb food optimally between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So if you're having your largest meal of the day late in the evening, when your gut is no longer primed to receive it, then you are using tremendous amount of energy to digest this food, and you are impacting the quality of your sleep and detoxification at night.
Right.
So it's so critical that you actually introduce a lunch break and have a healthy meal then. First of all, it gets you away from the screen, which is really important because you don't want this blue light stimulation all the time.
Mm.
It allows you to calm down your breathing and switch to a parasympathetic mode, because also eating at your desk in between Zoom calls is not very effective.
Yeah.
Because if you're in that sympathetic overdrive, remember that the blood supply is diverted away from the gut. And so your digestive capacity is reduced.
Mm.
And in order for you to actually digest, you need the parasympathetic system to be active, because that's the one that drives digestion. It's rest, digest, and
So you need to be
restoration,
you need to be in a relaxed
relaxed
state.
state. Yeah. So I try to advise my patients, even before lockdown, some of the simple things I've said is take 10 minutes away from your desk. I don't, even if you eat quickly, take 10 minutes away from your desk, walk outside, take your food, and just eat your food looking at the trees. Okay, because one, being away from your desk first creates a separation. It allows your brain to take a break, and we know, you know this better than I do. It's the, and now the name escapes me, of the part of the brain that only gets activated when you rest, and it's the part of the brain um, that that essentially consolidates. So people who suffer with creativity and decision fatigues, a lot of my patients say, I
Oh,
really find it
the
very hard.
hippocampus.
Yeah, a lot of people say, I'm unable to make decisions. I find it very
Yeah.
difficult to make decisions. And that's because their brain is unable to process. There's no rest time for the brain to go through that information. Their sleep is poor, and during the day, they're engaged from morning to night without any breaks.
Yeah.
So that 10-minute break is a godsend because A, it helps you switch off. It allows your brain to consolidate. It allows you to be present with your meal. It allows you to digest the food so you can get the nutrients in, because again, nutrients is information. It does drive biochemical changes in your body and genetic changes. So
Yeah.
we want to eat food and nourish our bodies. And then looking at trees, actually, geometrically, there are figures in the trees that when the eye captures, it allows you to relax. It puts you in the parasympathetic mode.
Wow, that's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very simple thing. And I always say, if you can't go out because it's raining, not that I'm advocating that very much, but they actually do it in Japan because people don't have a lot of space. So in Japan, they did a massive study on forest bathing, digital forest bathing,
Yes. Yeah.
compared to natural forest bathing, and they found that it has similar effects. So if you play a video of a forest, walking through the forest, if you have a water feature, it makes it even better,
Even more powerful. Yes.
more
Yeah.
powerful, and so it's really vivid. And so when you're watching that while you're eating, you actually activate your vagus nerve, push yourself into the parasympathetic nervous system, and allow your body to restore. It's very effective. So even if you're unable to, you say, "Oh my God, it's raining," or "I can't go out," or "I can't leave my child," or there are always solutions. There's always solutions. You can still be by your laptop, not ideal, but at least you can do that.
Yeah.
So that's really critical. Even between your meetings, if you just take 1 minute and you do some deep breathing exercises. And the key with the deep breathing exercise is you want your out breath to be longer than your in breath. So I always say
Right.
to my patients, you want to breathe in the ratio of 2-4-8. So you breathe in for a count of 2, you hold for a count of 4, and then you breathe out for a count of 8.
Why is the exhale why is the
Because
longer exhale more important?
because the exhale is what activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Right.
So the longer your exhale, the more your body gets activated in the restoration mode. Because if you notice on yourself when you breathe, when you're stressed, you breathe very shallow. It's not deep breathing. Your shoulders are hunched. You're more closed up, and so as a result, you're not getting enough oxygen, and that pushes you into a sympathetic overdrive. When your out breath is longer, your body gets the message that we're in a relaxed state. There is no danger. The brain doesn't register danger because you're able to take time to breathe.
Wow.
Breath is
Okay.
so powerful, really, really powerful. I actually picked up one of my favorite books from James Nestor called
Right.
Breathe, and I really encourage people to read that and learn about the power of their breath.
Right. And we'll put a link to that book in the show notes,
Yeah,
for people to be able to read. So
yeah,
that's really helpful, Amal. So let's start from the beginning. So you start your day focusing on self and your connection to the natural environment, your connection to your family. Um, you then start your work. Um, First thing that you say is take 1 minute breaks in between tasks or in between meetings where you're focusing on deep breathing, and you want to exhale for longer than you inhale, because that will reset it will just make you more relaxed. And I know from a neuroscience point of view that actually helps reset, kind of gather energy for your brain. Your brain gathers energy during that process in order to then be able to focus better on the next task at hand. So there isn't that energy drain switching going on. So that makes complete sense. And you also talked about eating regularly, and especially eating away from a stress-induced environment, such as your
absolutely.
screen, etc. So if you can go out, I got the sense that even though you didn't mention it, the kind of order of beneficial hierarchy is going outside and looking at trees to eat. If you can't, then maybe eat in silence or away from a screen where you're just kind of more relaxed. And for failing that, then you can do what you call forest bathing, which is to look at high quality videos of walking through a forest with some sort of water feature as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. What else could we do as well? You mentioned water earlier in our conversation. What are some of the things like that we could be doing during our day to help us actually perform better?
Yeah, so hydration is a big thing. A lot of my patients are dehydrated, and dehydration, I mean, we are 70% water, so it's really important that we maintain our hydration. It's really critical for literally all functions in our body.
Can you talk a bit more as well? So sorry for interrupting, because this is one of the biggest misconceptions I come across myself, which is a lot of people have a misconception about what dehydration is. They think of it as more of an extreme thing, but actually there are different levels of dehydration. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the rule of thumb is if you wait till you're thirsty to drink, you're pretty dehydrated by that stage.
Right.
You're pretty dehydrated. So you want to drink on a regular basis. So a lot of people, for example, say, "Oh, well, I didn't drink for 5 hours, but then I drank a liter." Well, that doesn't help because we also know about physics, right? You cannot. There's so much the body can absorb in one go. So if you
Right.
drink too much water, most of it is going to be flushed out through your kidneys, and you're not going to benefit. You're not going to be absorbing it. So it's really important that you drink throughout the day. And the best advice I always give my patients is keep a big bottle of water, and that's a reminder that you need to continuously drink and aim to finish that two bottles of that water with you.
Right.
And a really good way is to actually start your day with 2 big glasses of water, because you get dehydrated throughout the night. You're perspiring, your body's detoxifying. It needs to dump all of that in the morning, all the toxins that it cleaned up. So it's really critical that you hydrate first thing in the morning to allow your liver to dump all its toxins, and you basically get in a good amount of your water that you need to take. So as a rule of thumb, you want to drink 1 liter of water for every 25 kilos of weight,
Okay. Okay.
roughly.
One liter.
Yeah. So people always say, "Oh, just 8 glasses." But I like one of the other teachers I listen to. He says if you're a big person, you drink big glasses of water. If you're a small person, so not just okay, I'm drinking, but if you're 6 foot and you're drinking small regular size glass, say 8 glasses of water, that's not sufficient. So you really want to go by body weight. So that's why I say 1 liter per 25 kilograms of weight is a really good measure to go by.
Right. Okay. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So water, we don't. So the moment you feel even a little bit thirsty, then technically your body has started feeling. Well, technically you're dehydrated,
You're
right?
dehydrated.
It's obviously at the lower level, but okay. So that makes complete sense. What else could we be doing?
Right. So then you need to create boundaries in terms of when you finish working
Right.
and then spending time with your family or connecting with loved ones or spending time with your kids. It's really important to make that switch. So you've got to create those boundaries because now all our boundaries are blended. You have to be, you have to be the master of that. Before that, you would come home and then your only connection with your phone is with your work is probably your email.
Right.
And then sometimes you might turn on the laptop or whatever, but there's a physical disconnection. Now we don't have that physical disconnection, and we must create it because for several reasons. One, during the day, so when you wake up, your body releases cortisol, and then cortisol is your kind of get up and go hormone. It's not only the stress hormone. It has a bad rep, but it is actually necessary for life. So, and then it needs to drop throughout the day up to sort of 0 levels by 9 p.m. so that then your melatonin starts to release and then you can go to bed.
Right.
Okay, so what that drop in cortisol, what we also refer to it is building your sleep drive.
Right.
So you want to be able to build a sleep drive to allow you to get into deep restful sleep. To build your sleep drive are things that we talked about. First of all, getting exposure to direct light, direct daylight, sunlight or daylight,
Even if
first
it's
thing
a
in the
cloudy
morning,
day, right?
even if it's a cloudy day, right?
Right.
You get that so the brain, the pineal gland registers it and starts to release cortisol, and you basically set the clock for the day. Okay. Second thing, regular meal times. Okay, because again, we're working according to the circadian clock and according to the body clocks. Thirdly, coffee. Maintain your coffee intake only in the morning, because coffee after 12 becomes a problem because coffee's molecular structure is similar to another molecule in the body called adenosine. And so it starts to compete with adenosine receptors. And when it binds to it, adenosine has nowhere to go. And then as a result, you can't build your sleep drive. You need adenosine to bind to the receptor in order to build your sleep drive so that you can get sleepy in the evening and have restful sleep. So coffee after 12, 12 in the afternoon becomes problematic. Okay. And then thirdly, you want to remove exposure of blue light. So at least an hour before bed, you don't want any exposure to any technology, TV, phone screens, laptops, and what have you, because that blue light continues to activate the pineal gland in the wrong way. That we're still in daylight, continue to produce cortisol, and then your melatonin is not released, and then you have trouble falling asleep, or you fall asleep from exhaustion, which is not the same thing, and then you don't have restful sleep. Now, why is this a problem? Because if you don't produce sufficient melatonin at night, melatonin is not just the hormone that gets you to sleep and maintains your sleep, but it also is the hormone that plugs the holes in your brain through the night. Okay, so it actually heals the blood-brain barrier. It's very, very, very important hormone. And it's the hormone that helps your thyroid to release thyroid hormone in the morning. So if you don't have sufficient melatonin, you are unable to heal all the basically inflammation that occurred during the day in the brain. Okay? And that as a result, if you go into the next day with more brain inflammation, that's where you start to see decline you start to see brain fog, memory decline, trouble concentrating, and so on. So that's why it's so important what you do also in the evening. What you do first thing in the day and what you do last thing in the evening are so important to ensure that you have the capacity to clean up your brain and body at night.
So you're saying that those doing what you just suggested is going to help you have more energy during the day and be able to focus better?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
so it's counterintuitive when people say, I have sleep problems. I'm like, what do you do in the morning? Right? Because what you do in the morning sets you up for how the quality of your sleep and how you're going to sleep at night.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my point was what you do in the morning is so critical, which is ensuring that you get exposure to direct light, you get hydrated, and you avoid any negative stimulating environmental exposures, right?
Right. Okay.
So you want to avoid the news, you want to set yourself in a good state and ensure the natural release of cortisol.
So what advice do you give to your patients? Because what you described about, creating boundaries, making sure that you don't look at a screen an hour before you go to sleep, etc. That helps you actually be able to focus better and have more energy during the day, which is what we want, especially as sales professionals. But in an always switched on world and a really connected world, that is very difficult, particularly with the stresses that our businesses are going under. If you're an executive or a business leader, you kind of have to be always on or always at least engaged in order to fulfill your responsibilities as a business leader. And also sales professionals are in a very high intense situation as well. So they constantly feel the need to have to check their emails, be up to date with the news. Sometimes there are things that are updated or breaking news that are coming out in the evening. So we may feel that that's very hard to follow that strictly. So what advice do you give to your patients in such a situation that may not be strictly adhering to that, but it's at least better than some of the things they're doing right now?
Yep, that's a great question. So I think that the first point I want to say is about stress. Now, we can't escape stress. Stress is around us. Stress is always going to be part of our life. Actually, stress is good because in many situations, it pushes us out of our comfort zone to grow and deliver and achieve.
Yeah.
But it's where stress becomes a problem is where you lose your capacity to adapt. So if there's a loss of adaptive capacity in the body to stress, that's where problems start to occur. So
Right.
what we want, what I tell my patients is I want you to learn to dance with stress. I don't want you to remove stress. I don't want you to, become a monk or, meditate 24/7 because that's not realistic. But what I want them is to learn how to dance with the stress. And the way you learn how to dance with the stress is by creating a routine. So the only thing is, even if you start with literally, I have patients who literally start with a 5-minute break. That's all they can do. That's all they can manage in their
What,
day is
in the evening or during the day? Sorry.
during the day is to
Right.
find a 5-minute window. So I ask them, schedule it in your diary, just like as if it's a meeting. Take those 5 minutes break for you. You can drink water, you can listen to a song you want and dance. As long as you just go away from, even if you close your eyes and just breathe for 5 minutes, I'm happy with that. Because all you want to do is interrupt the pattern so that the body feels that it's in a safe environment and it's capable to adapt to the stresses around it. But if it's
Mhm.
continuously bombarded and there's no switch between your sympathetic and parasympathetic, you get loss of resilience. That's what we call loss of resilience, because you're supposed to be able to switch between them quite
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
So it might seem daunting. You're like, oh, I have to remember to wake up and go into the light and drink water and do this and this. What I say is baby steps. It's all about baby steps and all those small shifts that you make. So you start with, okay, I'm gonna avoid the news for the first half an hour. By the time you wake up, you brush your teeth, you know, half an hour have passed anyway already,
Mm.
right? Um, or if that's too hard for you, then just schedule 5 minutes in the day, because it's it's progress that creates momentum. It's not
Right.
results, because what we're trying to do is you're going to start to feel a bit better, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to take on one more action, and then you feel better and you're going to take on one more action. What I say in the evening, because I know it's really hard, I mean, I do it, I'm constantly in the evening doing patient reports. um, what I mean, there's many ways you can do it. One, you can buy blue light blockers, okay,
Right.
which means that help block blue light, and so it stops that stimulation to the pineal gland and allows your melatonin to release. So you can still work on your laptop, you can still watch the news if you need to, which I really discourage late at night. But if you need to, if you have to, you have to. But at least wear those so that at least your body is getting the message that actually it's nighttime. I can start to produce melatonin even though there's still some stimulation.
Right.
Another really good technique I find is I ask my patients to pick up pen and paper and just write whatever's on their mind to get rid of that excess energy in the evening. Just get it out of your system, because that's also that nervous energy stays in the body. So we want to get it out. And it's not a journal. You can tear this piece of paper apart and throw it. It's just about getting that energy out of your system. And that
Right.
really, really helps. So for a lot of my like execs or top performers in corporate world, very simple things we start with. Very, very simple things. We literally say, okay, no coffee after 12,
Mhm.
a 5-minute, 10-minute break during your day, and then half an hour before bed with no screens. That's all we
Mhm.
start with. And it makes tremendous difference. Really, really, it makes a big change. And then they get excited, and so they start to then adopt more and more changes. So we start to change things in their diet, and then we start to, you know, of course, if they have some underlying conditions, we work on treating those. But it's all about baby steps. That would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, that's super interesting because yeah, baby steps, start with one thing, make that part of your habit and routine, and pretty soon you'll be able to add one more thing and that become part of habit again, etc. That is really helpful. One of the things that I wanted to cover, now I know this is a bit of a dangerous minefield,
Yeah,
um, because everyone's body is so unique and their reaction to uh, what we're about to discuss can be very different. But what are some of the dieting habits? Now, there's a mistranslation of what diet is nowadays, because diet, in its original meaning, is the food that you take. Your diet, i.e., you could be a diet of meat, you could be a carnivore versus an omnivore versus a herbivore. That's your diet. Now people take that word as food reduction or calorie reduction, which is not the right translation. Um, what are some of the foods that we should be eating more of, or at least some of the meal or diet habits that we have that are not helping us when it comes to our performance, energy, focus, etc.? And what are some of the supplements
yeah.
that we are missing out on that are really important that we can all safely take or increase?
Great question. So I think the biggest problem with diet is that when we're busy, we tend to, we tend to depend on easy carb-based foods, right? We
Right.
want something that we can cook quickly. So a lot of people tend to say, okay, well, I'll just cook a pasta, I'll eat toast, I'll make a sandwich. There's really minimal fruit and vegetable intake,
Right.
and there's a high load of carbs and sugar and so on. So the first thing you could do, and the really important you must do, is we need to cut out processed foods. So
Right.
it's not about calories, okay? It's not about how much calories you go in, how much calories come out. That's not the point. The point is, are you feeding your body with the right food that is going to drive optimal performance? Okay, because food is not just for joy. Food is actually information. It
Right.
actually helps you code the computer. So if you're eating foods that drive inflammation, you're going to end up with inflammation, and you're going to end up with symptoms of inflammation like brain fog and pain and headaches and nausea and gut issues and so on. If you eat food that nourish your body, such as vegetables, fruits, high quality proteins, then you're going to perform better. It's as simple as that. It's simple. It's what you input is going to determine your output.
Yeah.
Okay? So the first thing I always ask my patients is, I ask them to take, you can download, there's plenty of those on Google, where you can say a day planner, and then I ask them to write in the day what time they eat, what they eat, and next to it to write what they feel.
Mm.
If there's a change in your energy, i.e., you either your energy shot up after you ate, or your energy dropped, then there's a problem with your insulin and your sugar levels,
Mm.
and that is going to have a significant impact. Yeah, significant many things, but it has going to have significant impact on your energy levels.
Mm.
Um, Maintaining the energy and that focus. So you never want to be in a state of hypoglycemia. Don't want to be in a state of hyperglycemia, which is high sugar. And a normal person with a healthy function, if they ate
Mm.
um, whatever they ate, it shouldn't change their energy levels.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is you build awareness. So I ate this, and then I felt low. Okay, so why did I feel low? Then we start to look at the content they're eating, and most often it's a lot of sugars.
Right.
Okay, so they might have had cereal or toasted bread with, you know, um,
Jam and stuff.
with jam or something, or or some cheese, or there's like, it's devoid of um, true nutritional value.
Mm.
Because as shocking as it may sound, a piece of toast bread, not the baked, sourdough and really nice baked breads that you might get from the bakery, but those standard sliced breads that you get in the supermarket, that slice of bread has a higher glycemic index than a Snickers bar, because it's so highly processed. It shoots up your sugar level to really, really high levels.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So you're saying that a regular slice of bread,
White
whether
bread,
it's in a sandwich or toast, even a whole meal, I think. There's a white bread as well, or just a whole meal?
white bread, whole meal a little bit less, but white bread for
But,
sure.
but
Yeah,
those kinds of breads has a higher glycemic index and impact than a Snickers bar.
yeah.
Wow.
I was shocked when I saw that data. I was like, this is crazy, because it's highly processed. It's
Right.
highly processed. And if you look at the ingredients, there's a lot of sugar in there.
And
Um,
I'm assuming you're also referring to baguettes, for example, or rolls. They unless it's high quality, even though I mean it'll still have that impact, but less of an impact. But
yeah,
even things like baguettes, and just for our viewers to be clear, it's not just for toast, for example, or square bread. It's baguettes or rolls, etc. They too could have a very high glycemic index, close to a Snickers bar, if not more.
yeah. And especially if they're taken alone, because it's all about balance in your diet. So if you're eating like a slice of bread with some jam, and then there you go, your sugar level, you've increased your sugar levels to really high amounts, and then you create insulin issues and so on. So what I want them to do is always in the morning, is to eat things that maintain their sugar balance, and also support the detoxification and alkalize their body. So I always say, whether you have it in a smoothie or whether you have it as a salad, but as long as you have a good intake of fruits and then vegetables, with some protein like eggs or smoked salmon or, some nuts, whatever, you need to have fats, proteins, and carbs, but your carbs should really come from fruits and vegetables. You want to eat whole foods. We want to focus on whole foods more
Right.
so than processed foods. And I know sometimes it's hard because you're busy and so on, but when you really when it comes to preparing this food, it really does, it's just a misconception that healthy food takes so long to prepare. There's so many amazing recipe books written by so many doctors, like Mark Hyman's book, food, I think it's called Food the Cookbook. It's wonderful. Like, the recipes are so easy. You can whip up your breakfast in 10 minutes. You can do your lunch in 15 minutes and enjoy a very healthy, low glycemic, nourishing food, because that's ultimately what we want. We want to nourish you so that your brain can function
Right.
effectively.
Right. Okay.
Um, so the so that's really what it is. It's the sugar and then the quantity of the food. So what happens is people, as I mentioned, either miss meals, which that of course pushes them into hypoglycemia, impacts their energy levels, or when they come to the evening, when your body is not primed to receive that volume of food, we end up eating a huge amount of food, often in front of a TV. And so first of all, there's no presence, there's no awareness. We haven't activated the cephalic phase of digestion. We're not producing enough enzymes, and then we're eating sort of, without focus, without presence. And so we don't digest our food well, and we take huge amounts, and then we feel very full and we feel sick. And then that has a significant impact on the quality of our sleep. And then we
Yeah.
get into this vicious cycle. So I always say that when it comes to food, you want to focus on whole foods, things that come from the ground, not things that come in packages. You don't want processed foods. You want to balance your meals so that you have good amount of protein, a good amount of vegetables, like 70% of your plate is vegetables, with then
Right.
protein and some fats. And by vegetables, I mean also, of course, carb-based vegetables like sweet potatoes and parsnips and carrots and so on.
Yeah.
And then avoid having large quantities. Most of our problem is we eat too much rather than too little. Too
Right.
much of the bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yes, so it has a significant impact on our performance. I mean, gluten, I know it's a super controversial topic uh, for many people, and there's a big trend to go gluten-free. But I really caution you about going gluten-free for the sake of going gluten-free, because if you go gluten-free and bread is the biggest source of fiber that you have in your diet,
Mm.
okay, and you cut that out, and fiber is so essential for the health of your microbiome, which controls very much has a significant impact, knock-on effect on your immunity and your endocrine system. If you cut that fiber out and you don't replace it with other fibers, either non-gluten based fibers or grains or vegetables, then you get significant deficiency. It alters the microbiome and it actually increases your risk of cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So it's very unsafe to just say, I'm going to cut gluten and then not replace that fiber content,
What would
going on
you
a gluten-free
what would
diet.
you replace? What would you advise some of our viewers replace that fiber with? What are some of the high fiber foods that we should eat?
So my first go-to would always be vegetables. So
Right.
increase your intake of cruciferous and leafy green vegetables.
Right.
you know and then otherwise, or in addition to, not otherwise, in addition to, you can have things like quinoa and rice is actually quite good for you. Purple
Right.
rice, brown rice, white rice. You can have oats, so other grains like buckwheat and so on. So you can have other forms of grains that are healthy for you, and that provide the added benefit of fiber, but without the negative effect of gluten. The
Right.
reason gluten is bad for our health, because the actual gluten, um, first of all, gluten as a protein, as a molecule, it's quite a large one, and our body cannot digest it. Nobody can fully digest gluten. That's just not possible. And this
Right.
is the work of Dr. Alessio Fasano in the US. He's the pioneer of this research and kind of opened our world and eyes into the impact of gluten.
Right.
Now, there's many forms and different types of protein within the family of gluten. But for the sake of to simplify this, for the sake of our discussion, first of all, we cannot fully digest gluten, one. Second of all, gluten, irrespective of whether you're healthy or unhealthy, it tears the lining of your intestine. So every time
Wow.
you eat gluten, it tears it, and then your body heals it, and it tears it, and your body heals it.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
it's not a
Okay.
problem if you eat it once in a while, because your body's capacity to heal is phenomenal. The problem is if you have a bad diet and you eat high amount of gluten, high amount of sugar, there's lots of factors, but if you end up eating too much of that and your capacity to heal is no longer can keep up with the amount of tears you have, you end up with something called a leaky gut. And a leaky gut, it means that that cell wall that was basically sealed now has holes, and the toxins that swim in the gut lumen that normally are never registered by the immune system because they never cross the barrier, start to cross the barrier, they drive inflammation. And we know that when the body starts to mount a response, antibodies against those toxins, and especially gluten particles, there is something that we call molecular mimicry, where the body starts to look for a similar pattern that looks like gluten anywhere in the body where the pattern looks like gluten. So, for example, it's the amino acid pattern is ABCDE. So everywhere it finds ABCDE, it will attack it because it's not very precise.
Even if it's healthy.
Even if it's healthy. So it starts to attack
Wow.
tissues. And one of the biggest tissues that it tends to attack that we've seen is brain tissue,
Oh, wow.
thyroid tissue. So we get a lot of people with way worsening symptoms of brain fog and so on when it comes to gluten.
So it's not just I don't want to use this word, but it's the only word I can think of. It's not a fad thing. It's not something that's become trendy just for trendy's sake. There's some real science behind why it's bad for you. And in fact, the gluten actually, it sounds like from what you're saying, gluten has a big cause when it comes to brain fog and your ability for your brain to detoxify and therefore be able to refocus for the next day and actually perform well for the next day.
Yeah, because it's not because gluten is the enemy, and I'm not saying that people should come off gluten. My point is that if you have any underlying conditions, gut issues, autoimmune conditions, or if you're suffering from severe brain fog, the likelihood that if you cut out gluten, which is a highly inflammatory molecule, you're going to feel better.
Right.
Same goes with sugar. But so that's what I would say is we always we do trials, because it's not just, oh, I'm celiac or I'm not celiac, right? Because you can have the genes and not express celiac, right? Or you can have the genes and express celiac. You can have the genes and you can express something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, that a lot of people have.
Right.
So for me, the biggest thing I always look at is, what is your diet? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? Because all these behaviors that you do on a daily basis act as biological forces that influence your health and performance.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, this
and
is hugely interesting. Yeah.
yeah, because I always say that when I sit with my patients, my consultations are normally 2 hours, because at the crux of it, when we look at functional medicine, it really is the story of your life, is the story of your health. So everything you've been doing in your life, what you've exposed to, what you've experienced, illnesses, so on, so forth, up to the today, is it has a is the reason why your health has taken this trajectory.
Right. Okay. That is hugely interesting. And now I'm starting to see why it's such a holistic approach to health, because everything is interconnected. The last thing, and I'm conscious of time now, we're coming up to time, and I want to really thank you for what you've shared. There's one more thing I want to discuss, and I've deliberately left this one last because we have a tendency that I've observed to supplement our way out of things while still maintaining an unhealthy, let's call it a less than optimal lifestyle.
Yep.
So we over supplement in the hope that that's going to counteract the bad habits when it comes to our sleep, our diet, all those kind of things. And in reality, you have to do those. If you just do those things, you'll see a dramatic shift without having to supplement. The supplement is the actual definition of the word, a supplement. But what are some of the supplements that we could all benefit from intaking a bit more, that's actually going to help us as long as we're doing all those other things correctly.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Yes, I always say you cannot supplement yourself out of a bad diet. Full
Right.
stop. Okay, because supplements are there as an add-on to support you, but it all starts with your foundation. So
Right.
if you have bad diet, bad habits, daily habits, then supplements are not going to do the job. They
Right.
might make you feel a bit for a little while, um, but then they will stop working. So in our current circumstances, because we live in a world that's different than pre-COVID days, there's several things that I would say are a priority. One is you all must be on vitamin D. But first, check your levels of vitamin D, okay? Because vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, where we get from sun mainly, is so important for so many reasons, but one very important reason is immune modulation. It helps balance your immune system to make it an intelligent immune system, not an overreactive or underactive immune system. So vitamin D levels are so essential, and now the data is out. All the recent publications show that adequate vitamin D levels improve your prognosis if infected with COVID. So it's really, really important that you get your blood level of vitamin D checked, and you want it to be somewhere between 70 and 80.
Right.
That's it. So vitamin D is a really good, important supplement. Now, there are some nuances to that. For example, women who are past 40 should take their vitamin D with K1 and K2 because we want to prevent calcification in the arteries. So there's a lot of nuances. So that's why I always say don't supplement without getting advice, because you can sometimes end up doing more harm than good.
Right.
The second piece is a good quality multivitamin. That's really important because that's going to help supplement us and provide the nutritional support that the body needs for biochemical function.
Right.
And when you're looking at a good quality multivitamin, you want to have, of course, all your usual culprits, all your vitamins and your minerals and so on. But what's really important in your multivitamin is that the B vitamins that you have in those multivitamin to be activated B vitamins, methylated B vitamins,
Right.
because those means they're ready to be utilized. The body doesn't have to work hard in order to activate them. So you want
Right.
to make sure that the multivitamin you buy has that. The
And
second,
it'll tell you that on the packet. It will say
yeah, it
active.
normally says it will say methylated B2, B. They have different names.
Right.
I'm happy to put some links, share with you some links to some of the brands I endorse, as in support use, simply because they're first first of all go through very thorough testing, and they're like pharmaceutical grade supplements, and I trust their clinical data.
Right.
The third, I would say, is fish oils. And this is really critical because this is very important for brain function.
Mm.
Okay, so we need a healthy amount of fatty acids in our body. And you don't want just omega-3. People always, think, oh, all I need to supplement. You actually need a mix of omega-3, omega-6, and 9. And you now have really great formulations of fish oils with the 3 combination in the correct ratio that you need to supplement with. That's really important.
Mm.
And then I would say 2 other supplements that I think are really important. N-acetylcysteine, which
Mm-hmm.
is a very powerful antioxidant, and it's a precursor to glutathione, which is the master antioxidant in the body. Really important to reduce your oxidative stress load in the body. And
Right.
it's very safe. And well, it's naturally produced in the body, so NAC. And then the third would be curcumin. Curcumin
Right.
is such, I mean, I will always encourage you to eat the root, the curcumin root, and use it in your cooking. But having curcumin in the current environment that we live in is so great because it's an antioxidant, it's an immune modulator, it reduces pain. You can just Google turmeric health benefits, and you can see the plethora of scientific data that shows the benefits of taking curcumin or incorporating it in your diet to your health. So these are the things I would say: vitamin D, a multivitamin, um, curcumin, and NAC would be the top ones. And then, of course, we can take a probiotic, but there's tons of probiotics, and I'm not a fan of let's just supplement for the sake of supplementing. I think you should always test. Um, and with probiotics, you got to remember that a probiotic is basically like a tourist in the economy. So they just come in for a while and then they leave. So they don't actually change the environment. So you want to change the environment in your gut to a healthy one. And that's a massive other topic that we can talk about another day. But it's really important. With a probiotic, I would suggest, a multi-strain, good quality probiotic is good to have. But again, I really encourage you to work with a nutritionist or a practitioner, get your blood work done, and then supplement accordingly as per advice, and make sure that you use good quality supplements.
Yeah, that is hugely beneficial, and I've learned a lot here. And I want to thank you, Amal, for
You're welcome.
what you've shared. And I mean, this is not because I know you. I know personally that I've seen a huge change from where I am now to where I was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Especially in terms of my performance. My creativity has shot up, my ability to focus, my energy levels. I used to get dips in my energy level after lunch, and I would really struggle between 1 and say 3 o'clock. Now my energy level just continues to go up, and until about say 8 o'clock. But that's because we have a child, so that's obviously going to happen. But I can personally vouch for the fact that following some of those advice that you give is going to have huge implications. And what I would say to our viewers is, um, we are biological creatures at the end of the day. We're not robots. We can't get away from that. And the way that we treat our bodies, if we treat it well, it will serve us back, and we'll be able to express ourselves to the very best of our abilities and our potential. So this has been hugely helpful. Thank you so much, Amal. One final question is, how can our viewers follow you, learn more about you, get in contact with you if they wish? What are some of the ways that you can do so?
Yeah, of course. I do actually regular monthly webinars with um, a really dear friend of mine. She's a functional nutritionist, and we do that on a weekly basis. You can check all the recordings on my website at amalismail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, and it's Amal Ismail underscore IFMCP.
Right.
And and also you can sign up to my newsletter so that you can get updates and information that way. And you can get in touch with me directly at hello@amalismail.com. That's my email.
Right.
And yeah, I'm really excited. I'll be happy to help anyone. I do 30-minute discovery calls if you just want to have a chat and learn a little bit more. There's just so much. We are learning so much about the human body. I think that my message to you is, and you said it so eloquently, Muid, is, if you treat our body well, it will support us in achieving all that we need. But remember that, true wealth comes with good health. You cannot, you cannot trick, trick your way out of bad health in this world, right? It will catch up with you eventually. So it's really important. Your body is really your temple, and you've got to take care of it. And I love Jim Rohn's saying that take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live, because ultimately this is your vessel. And if you don't take care of your vessel, what is the point otherwise, right? We're not trying to live for 100, but live with, patched up with medicine and surgeries and all of that. You want to live to 100 with full vitality. And so that's what I really want you to take away from that message, is that everything you do on a daily basis has a significant impact on your health. And if you do only minor changes, you can see the benefit. You don't have to do expensive tests or go on crazy diets. It's only really small changes that make a profound change, because your body is such an intelligent machine. You just have to work with it. Sometimes I just say you need to get out of its way, and it will do what you need it to do.
Yeah, no, that is hugely helpful. And again, I want to thank you a lot for sharing your experience and insight, and what you've seen work with some of your patients. And it's really important right now because of the amount of pressure that's being exerted on us, not just externally, but also internally. You know, we're hard on ourselves sometimes, and we push ourselves to extremes, often to our detriment. So this has been incredibly valuable session. And I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot of feedback from our viewers, and they're probably going to want to learn more. So we might have to do another one of these sessions in the not too distant future.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you again, Amal, for your time and sharing this with us. I hope our viewers take what you've just shared to heart. I think it will really help them. So have a great day, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so